Well, it is that time again, everybody. Hope you are doing well. My name is BirdDogJon, and I am back in action.
In those scenarios, it's good to neuralize the cameras. You guys know that best.
Very straightforward. Plug it in, go to the web UI, link the source, walk away. You know, like super simple. I keep looking over at the chat, and I keep seeing you are full of it. Tasty, spicy meat snacks. Covered in flavor. I mean, you can't go wrong. So what's going on? We've got a handful of folks here in the chat, and I really appreciate that. What's up, mate? Hey, Warren, how are you? Appreciate it. Hey, Robbie, how's it going, man? You're just talking about you. What's going on, Tom? Ahoy. How is it going? What's going on, Go Web? Good to see you again. Thanks for hanging out with us again today. Appreciate that. Feel like I'm in this video more than anyone but John. It's true, NetApp. You are, I'm going to cut this up and put this in the next intro. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hopefully you're doing well. My name is BirdDogJon, hanging out here on a very cold snow day in Michigan on a Thursday morning. Yeah, lots been going on, but hopefully you are doing all right and you're having a good end of the week. It's coming up quick, so that's all good. We are going to hang out and do some stuff today. The plan is to have Jake on. He is a very busy guy, so he's finishing up some other stuff that he has going on, so he'll join us in a few minutes. But in the meantime, I cannot seem to get this camera to look clear. I don't know what it is, but it definitely doesn't look clear to me. So let's see if I can't adjust. Whoops, daisy, where did that go? Let's see if I can't adjust that. Why now? Why? All right, so that was weird. I opened Google Chrome and pushed it to the side of the screen, and it just totally disappeared into the abyss. So, good times. All right, so let's, thanks, Windows. All right, let's check this out and see what we have going on inside this A200. I came in this morning, and all the white balance was off, and I'm not entirely convinced. Actually, I'm a little off-center even. Whoops, that's too far. So I'm not totally convinced that I have it exactly back to where it used to be. I have all my lights on. Everything's running. So the lighting hasn't changed. Maybe it's just me. Who knows, right? All right, so let's go here. I'm just gonna open up the web UI, and that's that 240 up there in the corner. And Frink thinks if you're watching, there does not seem to be any sort of sensor issue. So good news for us. All right, there, that 240. I opened that iris up just a smidge, and now let's turn off the autofocus. Go to camera control, and try and dial this in a little bit. So let's go to the extreme, which is what this is, and then bring it back to where I think it's focusing on the microphone. And so try and bring it back. And now it looks like way too overexposed, right? Maybe. I don't know. Give me your thoughts on the overexposed image that we're looking at here. I could tone it down a little bit. Whoa. Oh. All right. I think I figured this out. So let's go to 3.4 seems a little bit too low. All right. I like this, I think. But the focus just doesn't seem clear for some reason. Oh, and you know what that might be? That might be because the sharpness is all the way down. Boom! There it is. Okay, cool. So, all right, when we switch back, all will be well with the world again. There you go. I'm not out of focus. At least on the camera, I'm not out of focus. I might be a little fuzzy this morning, but bear with me. You're still hanging out with us, so that's exciting stuff. All right, so let's check out what's going on. What's going on, Jorge? Hola. Hopefully you're doing well. Thanks for hanging out with us. Go Web. Greetings. Thanks for jumping in on the show, as always, all the way over from India. So it's getting going on late now, isn't it? It's probably like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. As always, a pleasure. Hey, what's the USB port on the Hey Gadgets pod? What's the no greeting, just right into the questions, huh? So what's the USB port on the BirdDog Play for? Firmware updates. That was a very unexciting answer. Firmware updates. Hey, cool firmware update. Yeah, there you go. Which camera are you talking about, Ralph? Because we got lots of updates out there. Good stuff. What's going on, Angus? Good morning. Hopefully you're doing well. Thanks for stopping by. A little over. Now well over. Yes. What do we think of this image compared to the other ones, right? Like, so I feel like the light, I feel like it's about the same as the other shots. So we're going to switch to the 240 here in just a second. And you guys can give me your final synopsis on what's going on. Yeah, good times. What's going on, Pandorica? How are you? Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate you. And hopefully you're doing well. And yeah, so we are currently, and maybe I could pull this up and show you what is going on here with this TV. Something's up with my secondary monitor. Didn't turn on. And then it did turn on, and then didn't turn on. I've got two TVs. They're both Samsungs. When I press the power button on the remote for the big one, they both shut off. So that's really annoying. All right, so let me see here if I can get screen capture to work, because it just turned that screen on. There it is, screen capture. And I'm going to open up NDI Studio Monitor. Oh, hey, everybody. It's PF120. And here is Studio Monitor. I'm just going to run this in low bandwidth mode just to keep the network requirements low. And then I am going to pull up my Auburn Road camera and show you guys what Michigan looks like in the winter. So this is the real deal. This is what our morning looks like. That is pretty much mostly ice. I drive this F-150 over here, and it is where I live. It was quite snowy, and so yeah, that's basically ice pellets that then got rained on and frozen, and so the snow that's on my truck is just like caked on. I walked out this morning and stepped in the snow and just walked on top of it. So I won't say I was walking on water, but is the closest thing to it here in Michigan, that's for sure. So, yeah, good times. Oh, greetings from Gadgets. Oh, there's the greeting. I appreciate that. It's all good. I appreciate the questions. That's what we're here for. We're here to answer your NDI inquiries and questions and all that good stuff. So, no worries. Yeah, thanks for coming by. So, yeah, that is what Auburn Road looks like right now, which is just outside of our office. Nice and cold. And yeah, icy, and it's the day that you appreciate having four-wheel drive, that's for sure. So for those of us who braved it, now the reason I could have functioned from home today, but the reason I came in is because of you. I wanted to definitely do this show and be in the office for it, because my home office is not set up to do the stream, and plus the cameras in here are a whole lot nicer, and it's a better rig than what I've got. So yeah, welcome to Michigan in February, as Balu rightly says. Yes, pure Michigan. That is the truth. That is the very essence of pure Michigan. Yeah, good times. So we're going to go through some stuff now. Today, I wanted to chat about 240, and actually, it's Jake's idea to talk about what we've got kind of going on. So he's going to join us in a little bit, and he's going to go through basically the functions and features of the 240, but kind of talk about why it is a step above some of our other camera line, especially in the HD realm, and why 240 is a great option in 2023 to get yourself into the NDI game. So I'm looking forward to having a chat with him and to be able to kind of cover things off. What computer am I on here? But I'm also here to answer your NDI questions. And so if you have questions out there that you'll want to chat about, by all means, go ahead and send those over in the chat. And I'm happy to bring those up and chat with you about all of that stuff, because that's why we're here. I don't have a Snacks on Stream today. Today was a mad dash to get into the studio, because I basically had meetings all morning about stuff that's going on, that has been going on all week. So had to get that squared away. And I also have more meetings after the show. So that's what my life has turned into, basically. Phone calls and remote sessions and meetings with people. And that's what we do around here these days. So good stuff. Exciting life of a support agent, that's for sure. GoWeb says, hey, what's that green and red bar at the bottom of the camera view? Okay, so that is showing... We're not really too sure how it's interpreting it, because it's kind of arbitrary. It's kind of subjective as far as I'm concerned. But evidently, it is a new feature in NDI 5, in the toolkit for NDI 5, that talks about, or it shows dropped packets, I believe, is what I understand it to be. So the function in the NDI 5, if you want to put that up there, is the connection reliability beta function. Now, I don't really understand it, because I'm not dropping frames. Even vMix doesn't say I'm dropping frames, so I don't know why the video piece is jumping like that. Like you would have observed if. Let me put this back over here. Whoops, I'm sorry. Let me put this back over here. So I'm not too sure if you've noticed both of them are in the green. One is audio, one is video. But for some reason, it shows that the frames for the video are dropping. And I'm not too sure what the deal is with that, because we're not dropping frames. Or maybe I am. I don't know. But it doesn't appear that that's what's going on. So I'm not too sure what the deal is with that. And I can pull up the Studio P200, which is that camera that you're looking at. Now, we're doing a screen capture, and it's in low bandwidth mode and whatever, so you're going to see some latency here. But again, it shows that, I don't know what this means. Is that good? Is that bad? If it's in the red, is that bad? If it's half in the green, is that, I don't know. I don't know how to read it. So, and I haven't found any literature on how to read it. So, yeah, I'm not too sure what the deal is there. But anyways, back to the show. But that's what that is. It's a stream reliability bar, I guess. And yeah, you know what would be interesting is to pull up. So I still have that HX, that PF120 camera that's running HX that we talked about earlier this week, and it is here on still producing HX. So I'd be curious if I open that. Oh yeah, and also that stream that you noticed on the desktop, that's low bandwidth mode, and so I'm like, how am I dropping frames on low bandwidth mode? That's only like 3 megs. So I'm not entirely sure how to interpret it. All that to say, I don't know how to interpret the little reliability bar. So here's that HX camera. So if I switch over to that, yeah, it's doing the same thing. Now this camera, I need to save a preset on this camera because it's all blown out. So if you want to see it, it's all blown out. But that's the HX feed. And clearly the exposure is jacked up. So maybe I'll fix that. That might be something fun to do while we wait for my friend Jake to join us. Let me go to the web UI and see what I can do about this image. There it is. Okay. So I don't know. Should I do this on camera? Is that what I should do? All right, so let's do this on camera. All right, back to the desktop, and I'm gonna bring in this guy right here, and this is how I want to do this. I'm gonna split screen this so that you can see it. I'm going to, however, make the web UI. One suggestion I am going to make is this mobile version of the website. I would prefer it to be mobile when you get to like 30% or 40% and not 60%, because that's really annoying. It should be full web UI until you get quite small. Anyways, that's just me. I'm going to see what they think about that. All right, so let's jump into the web UI and adjust these colors, because I know that's what you're waiting for. Bated breath. So cam control, we're going to go over to exposure. We're in manual mode, so let's just move this meter. It appears that the first that the preset that gets called on this is saving of like a wacky gain setting, because as soon as I change it, it basically restores it to what I want it to be. So I kind of like that. It's a little red, but not a big deal. We could certainly change this in the white balance. Whoa, I'm a little too green. Now this is a function where I'm going to need to see this up close and personal. So I'm going to bring this over here, make this full screen. All right, and then just make some minor adjustments. I'm a little jaundice, and I'm a little red. Still a little jaundice. Okay, there we go. Not too bad. Comparing it to the other cameras, that looks all right. So now I'm going to put this up here, and let's just change this from low bandwidth mode to high so that you can kind of see everything. There it is. And I think those colors are pretty similar to the PF120, which is this guy right here. And then there's a P200, which is in the bottom over here. Yeah, in the bottom corner. Those colors are pretty much the same. And if we jump between other camera shots, they're pretty even. So she's a beaut. So I like that a lot. And that's what I'm going to go with. So that was easy. Now what I need to do, though, is I need to save on that camera. I need to save the preset 1, right? Because then let's go to presets. Let's say camera, save preset 1. Okay. So now hopefully when it reloads every time, it will just come back with that same coloration that I want. That's how that's done. Okay. Back to the chat. I'm excited. I've updated my stream rack to Windows 11, and throughout testing shows, and thorough testing shows that it is to be reliable. This evening, I'll do my first show with Windows 11. Good luck. That would make me nervous. I got no hate for Windows 11. don't care for the layout, but they keep trying to do the toolbar that Mac has, and don't get rid of the start menu. You have a good thing going. Anyways, whatever. That's besides the point. Is there a smartphone app that can PTZ plus preset recall BirdDog cameras over Wi-Fi? In general, we don't say to do full NDI over Wi-Fi because there's some fundamental networking problems that happen there. So I don't think so. I think that there is a studio monitor app, but you have to pay for it. It's not free. And I think it can control cameras, but I've never used it because you have to pay for it, and it's not free. So, have you compared latency on ND Play in comparison to Flex Out? On what device? On a Play device? I haven't done it live on the show. We have a Flex Out here, and we have a obviously I'm running plays, but yes, there is increased latency on the Play, because it's a totally different processor. So if that's what you're wondering, then absolutely. If it's an iMac situation, the closest you're probably going to get is a 4K family device or a Flex, because they have a silicone chip inside them that are doing the decoding at one frame. If you're just putting this on TVs and it's not a real live situation for iMac Play, I think answers a lot of places where there are spots in the market that need something like that. In particular, just like showing what's happening in the house on the screens in the hallway. I mean, that's a great use case scenario for like churches and lecture halls and schools and all of that stuff. So that's where I see the majority of the market for Play going. Things that don't need mission critical iMac, because if it's really that critical, then you're probably talking about running BNC, which is thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So, or SDI. I'm up to 3 computers on 11 now. I'm not hating it too much, but the new start menu is pretty awful. Yeah, I have an issue with that start menu. I don't know. I don't agree. I think you should just stick with the old school. So, all right. So let me just run up with the chat and make sure we're tidied up there. Didn't miss anything. All right, cool. Now, as promised, we want to talk about the P240 today, and I am really excited because I love it when I can invite people on my show and they actually say yes, and they know more about this than I do. So we're all going to benefit from this today. I'd like to welcome my buddy BirdDogJake to the show.
Hey, John.
What is going on, man? How are you?
Doing good today. How are you?
Excellent. I need to provide some contrast, apparently, between... I don't normally have people on this show. So I'm going to provide some contrast with the background so that
let's change it up.
Yoink. Okay,
Awesome.
that's something better.
I like that background.
Yeah,
I
Mark
just
put that
downloaded that
together
from
for
my
me.
computer. Yeah.
Nice.
It's great.
Yeah, it's a good one. So how's it going, man?
Things are going well. Nice to be back in the studio.
Excellent.
Updated all my cameras yesterday to 9.4. So that was...
And how was that?
That went really well, actually.
Good.
Yeah, the 240 took everything perfectly. It was just that single upgrade. And then even the P4K was great. So I'm glad to be on the most recent firmware, and everything's running great.
So you did that on 240. What else is in your fleet?
P4K and P100, which is what I'm using today.
Cool. Awesome. What have you been up to since the last time we talked? I saw you a couple of weeks ago, but the last time you were on the show was late last year, maybe?
It was a few weeks ago when I was in Barcelona for ISE.
Barcelona. That's right. That's the one.
We showed the video wall, which was fantastic to see that on display. All the plays and SDMs were all running fantastically over on the booth. I actually have a pod with me behind me. So maybe in about a week or two, we'll go ahead and plug that in, and I can show everyone what that's like, because that's a really fun unit.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
I would also be anxious to see that.
Yeah, it's really cool. So it was awesome. I was testing the differences between sending NDI HX and NDI streams to that. Latency was indifferent, which was really great to know. And yeah, it was awesome to be able to have that selected right into Zoom. So I'm going to show all you guys in a few weeks. Should be exciting.
Cool. Yeah, we'll schedule it for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'd be good. Let's see. Frink, what's going on, man? We ran a play and a flex out a couple of weeks ago, decoding a multi-viewer stream with numerical
Awesome.
clocks running 2 separate TVs in our office. They both look great. It's true. They did. I mean, that is a test that we ran.
Yeah.
GoWeb says, welcome, Jake.
Hey, how's it going?
And, of course, Phil, BirdDog Phil, is
Hey,
over on
Phil.
Twitch. What's going on, man? It's good to see you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Angus is excited for pod. He's got one pre-ordered. Do we know? Do we have like a closer window as to what we're expecting those
We
to?
don't, but they're
ship
soon.
Okay.
Because the units that I have, I'm 90% sure those are the production units. So I believe we're just tidying up that firmware and getting ready to get those out. So
Gotcha.
very soon.
Cool. This other question is probably Jake. I think that you'd be able to answer this. So I've currently got 3 P200s, and I'm wondering how well the 240 will integrate with them. Are they naturally close color matched?
Yes, they can be. I have a 200, however, it's not plugged in. So maybe next time I'm on the stream, we can do an absolute comparison between the two.
Yeah, and I can give a little bit. It depends on your situation, but like I have controlled lighting in my studio, right? So this is the 200 that I'm running, and then the 240 is this camera.
Right.
And so they're pretty similar in terms of colorization. You have to dial them in, but like once you get them dialed in,
and the thing is that P240 has more megapixels and whatnot, so it's a it's a different sensor. However, it is still in that Sony X4R range that we all love throughout all of our cameras, which is how we can color match between the series.
Right.
Different lens runs, different sensor runs, everything makes all these little fine-tuned adjustments. So it's really great to be able to have cam control and these other softwares that we have to be able to fine-tune and have those together. Actually, on my screen capture over here, I have P4K and the 240 in the background. So like even earlier, I was going ahead and trying to adjust those cameras, right?
Yeah.
And color those in. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's especially the 240 and the 200, those are very similar platforms. They are different sensors. Like at the end of the day, they are different.
Yep.
But I find them probably to be the easiest to color match between, if I was to pick two cameras.
Yeah.
I really should swap out the 240 for the 200, like put them in opposite locations and make the 240 the primary. But just because it has like,
is also a wider camera as well, so it's actually the camera that we have the most range through. So it's the widest and it has the furthest tele when you enable the tele zoom.
Right.
So
yeah, it's good stuff. So and Angus is in full agreement of, I think it was about pod. He's got one pre-ordered. So
yeah.
All right, so let's get into this chat about the 240 and kind of what sets it apart from the rest of our fleet, because I think that is a great rabbit hole to go down. And then, guys, of course, in the chat, feel free to,
keep asking us questions. That way,
ask your questions. It
doesn't
have to be about the 240 necessarily, but we can definitely take your questions. I'll try and manage that. Jake's going to show us some stuff with the camera and kind of walk through feature sets and things that you should know about. With the 240, and then we'll go from there. So
let's pop on over to the cam control screen, so that way we can see what's going on over here.
Yeah.
Over here, just like all of our other cameras, we have the tracking enabled, which I'm not going to enable right now because it's in a different direction where I would normally place that. However, we have that available for the 240. Cam control functions. This is where we can enable that fine and standard speed control, which we've recently added to the entire fleet, so that we have finer PTZ control with our keyboard. When we jump into the web UI, that is over in this mode over here, speed control. When we enable this, we end up getting 255 steps in between pan and tilt through our keyboard, allowing you to get finer control.
Yeah. So what's the use case of that? As if this is a threshold setting?
This is.
Okay. So this is the maximum speed, but you can really dial it in terms of you want it to move at a certain speed. Is this saved in presets or not?
90% sure that this is saved in presets.
Okay. So, and we can certainly test that on our end, but yeah, we can, you can set basically the threshold of the movement of the camera, but we only had, what was it before? Like 21 or something?
21 steps, exactly. So if we pop back
Yeah.
over here, when you switch that over, we only had a maximum of 21. And I believe that's only the Visca standard. So what we've done is be able to have our own BirdDog control through there and added that superfine mode, which really helps.
Right. Cool.
So something that I use on a daily basis with my cameras is the scope system. So over here, I have my preview enabled on my scopes, which allows in cam control our preview proxy stream for the NDI to have our scopes window. So when I pop back over to my main NDI camera, I don't have that scopes window, right?
Right.
So from over here, this is when I can actually jump back into my exposure and jump in. Let's say I do go to manual. So if we needed to open up that iris, right, we can see the whole vector scope range start to get its data over there. We apply some more gain over here, right? And then I can dial in everything that I need to for this camera.
So how do you prefer to do this? Do you prefer to do this inside cam control, or do you prefer to do this in the web UI? What's your workflow look like?
I personally prefer it in cam control because right now, so I set my exposure. Now what I would end up doing is going down to my gamma settings, right? Let me close this over here so we can jump into here. And then with the P240, we have a ton of gamma settings, black level adjustment, black gamma adjustment, different straight pattern and standard values, which I'm happy to jump into. And I want to move this camera outside at some point during the stream, so that way we can see what this looks like outside and that full zoom range. Sure. But so like what we can see here, we know that this area is black, right? So I can jump in over here and I can bring that black level down, so I can start increasing my contrast between my lights, my darks, and my highlights and my shadows, right? So that way we can really fine tune this camera.
Yeah.
Right. Which is what I believe, what was it? CJ did a fantastic video of being able to color balance the P200. So this kind of even takes it a step further with the P240 because we have really access to all of those gamma ranges. And that's also available in this P4K as well. So if I needed to...
And a lot of these features are on board because of the size of the sensor that's in these cameras, right? Like the
exactly
P100 is a completely different sensor altogether again, but we don't get all of the we don't get the information off of the lens to do black level. So that's what people are asking about, is like, how do I adjust the black level on a P100? It's like, well, that information is actually not transmitted from the lens, and so you can't manipulate it.
Right. So like this P100 only has a gamma level of, I believe, 1 to 4. Right. Yeah. So we can clearly see that my range adjustment. Right.
Yeah.
So I personally preferred dark, so that way I can get this black background to fade away. Right.
Right.
Make that whole, in this, fall into the studio vibe. So.
Yep.
So yeah, let's see what else about that P240. Over here, I have, if we see at the top corner, I have the zoom OSD ratio on, right?
Yeah.
So right now I'm at 0 zoom, right? Or fully wide.
Yeah.
When I go ahead and punch in, right, that's only our 20x, right?
Yep.
BirdDog P240 goes 40x. So how do we enable that, right? So what we do is we go over to the web user interface. we'll jump into cam control. We have this mode here called teleconvert mode. So soon this will be coming to the cam control directly, but right now it's in the web user interface. When we enable this, that's when we get our field of view crop of this sensor that we have inside the P240. So now this is our 40x.
Wow. Right?
So we're still using, it's just a 1080p field of view crop of that 4K sensor. So that way it's not a digital zoom and we're not pulling those pixels. So, however, what this does is it only lets me go 2x, right? Because we start with that crop. So if I turn that off, I get my fully wide.
Okay.
If I turn that on, I get my field of view crop.
Right. But still at the full resolution value.
It's still at full resolution, 1080, 60.
Cool.
Right. I should probably eat that Mandarin. So when I turn that off, right, so we're back at that 20x.
Right.
And that's pretty far away, actually.
Right.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, that's quite a wide shot.
Yeah, so I'm curious if I haven't placed it in my front camera view yet. So I'm curious what this one's going to look like. But I just really prefer the P100.
Pandorica says, snacks on stream, Jake eats an orange.
I love it.
Okay, so then, so we got a question. I think it's about 200s.
Sure.
I'm using them on stage with a lot of zoom, and I've struggled with black level in the P200. So that is actually something that CJ does cover in his video, but something that I think that we found in the firmware, which you'll want to double check, is in the OSD, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if it's in the web UI. This is where I'm confused with the P200. P200, is the AE response time still listed in the web UI, or is that only in the OSD? I think for some reason, I don't know why, but we found out that it wasn't listed in the web UI anymore, but it is in the OSD. So you have to go into the OSD of the P200 and find the option that says AE response. Basically what that is how quickly does the lens change when you make a change?
Yep.
So when you zoom in on a subject, does it take a long time to adjust or a really fast time? You want to be sure that the AE response time is set to 1, which is as quick as it'll go. And if you change that, then setting your black levels seems to be a fair bit more responsive. Now, I think Jake will agree with me. Setting the way that you want the picture to look is very subjective.
Yep.
So what I think looks good is not what everybody else is going to think it looks good, and vice versa. And it's very interesting because I had some guys in the office a little while ago, and they were playing around with a camera, and they set it how they wanted to set it for a conference they were doing, and then I came back and changed it all back because it's not the way that I wanted it to look. And so it was no big deal, but everybody's impression
everybody's eyes are different. Everyone has a different subjective look that they're going for, depending on what the project is. There's some cameras and shots that you need things to be very contrasty, so you get this dynamic shot to it. There's some that you need to be more flat looking, so that way you have room in post to be able to adjust things. There's things that need to be done for ISOs, also for main production. So that's why we give you guys all the available options, right? To be able to adjust those camera settings, to be able to jump in and do the color matrix and match different cameras together, right?
Right.
So because every shot's different, every location's different, depending on if these are interior, if these are exterior, if these have, if your subject's in key lights or not, and where everything is, it's so dependent, even on location. You can have two cameras that are, maybe 15 feet apart. And just because the way the light hits the sensors and the cameras, you're going to need different exposure settings.
Yep.
It's a really exciting thing to be able to experience, especially on set, to be able to be like, oh, you know, this camera is actually, or this camera's 10 feet closer to my subject,
Yep.
but now this light on them is so much brighter, so I need to stop down, or I need to adjust my exposure settings and things like that.
Yeah, it's one of those items that when you give people a lot of options for like changing every single feature, then there's an element of, okay, we probably need to teach you exactly what each of these things are doing, and then we also need to, what's the end objective, like what is considered good or acceptable or done or whatever. So it's like I said, it's one of those subjective topics where it's like, I can't get the black levels to work correctly. It's like, or I can't get them, I'm struggling with black level. It's like, well, okay, we need to figure out what's the end goal, because it may not be black level. It may be the AE response time. It may be the contrast is wrong. It may be that the gamma settings are wrong.
Right.
You know, it may be a whole bunch of things. And, or it may be like you don't have adequate lighting, or you don't, or
no, I mean, I was just
maybe adequate lighting is the wrong term, but
you'd really need a lot of lighting for subjects. I mean, even for right now, I mean, with that post that was just on about having a far zoom and with stage lighting and whatnot, when with a P200, that iris is going to stop down. So I believe it's about like a 4.5, 5.6. So if you're on auto and it's fully wide at like maybe 2.5, then stops down to 4, you're losing 9, 12 dB of gain or of light resolution. So you have to expose or keep your iris at that minimum, so that way, and then expose properly for that, so that way when you do those wide to zoomed ranges, it stays consistent. That's one of those things you have to dial in the exposure settings. But just as an example, let me just pop on over to my screen capture. Like, so my P100, as I've been using, I think that's properly exposed and looks very good for the stream and for the content. But if we look at that P240, like, you see how much light that that's bouncing off my key on the wall, which is something that I do to make it a little bit more diffused, so it's not as harsh. It's ridiculous, actually. You know, there's a ton of light bouncing off this, and then because this is roughly what my room is exposed for, and I believe if we just I'm on manual, so this is not going to change where I'm looking, right? So I mean, it's probably a little bright coming in from the sun. That's probably a little bit more accurate, but still, like, I have a ton of light popping off of that to make this my P100 shot look the way it does. Right. So being able to dial in, the proper shutter position as well, which by default is 2 times your frame rate. So if I'm doing 60 frames per second on this P240, I want this to be at a roughly 1/125 or greater. As we see, we can stop down this iris, right? We close, there's less light coming into that sensor. One push white balance has been pretty good for me. Auto is a little bit blue, at least.
What's interesting about the white balance modes is those are very like circumstantial. Like I can't seem to figure out one that works in this studio. That's just automatic, so I always end up going in and changing the manual settings, just because I've controlled lighting. I'm not changing the shots. I'm not really moving around. I'm running through a playlist of other camera shots, so that's, I can set them and leave them. But sometimes, and again, this is one of those things, like, tell us about what it is that you're doing and what is the expectation. Like, do you need to go full manual, or can an automatic thing work for you and that's good for what you're trying to do? And so we give you the options, and then we let you make the choices, basically.
Exactly, because it really all depends on the shoot that you're doing and the production that you're working on. I mean, this light is a specific color temperature, and I know what that white looks like from my eyesight and from what I see on the camera. So then, like, having to dial in and being able to, I'm using that keyboard on the side over here. But I could also just use this, right, to be able to dial in and say, all right, that's clearly a little bit too blue. But then also on the scopes value, so right, if I zoom in over here and I know that well, it's a little bit of an off-white wall, but still I can dial in with my scopes value. Like that's clearly too red. So now that's back in the middle, right? That dot in this top corner.
Yeah.
Right. So if I shift this over to the green, we can see it shifting over to the green on this side as well. And then if I go the other direction, it's clearly too blue. So then this is how we dial in with a vector scope, that color, because that's reading the sensor, right?
Yeah.
You know, we don't, I mean, everybody's eyes are different, and some people need glasses, some people are colorblind, some people see different saturations of red and blue and green. So it's important to be able to rely on these tools to be able to get that production, right?
Yeah, especially because who knows what people are using for their screens, you know, like for their monitors. And so like it's
and that's a whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Like
tuning your screen for it.
Yeah. So it's like, what can you really trust? So you have to be able to camera sensors, for when you're editing video or photos and Lightroom values, things like that, like, because it's reading the pixels.
Right.
Right. So scopes are important.
That's interesting. Interesting that you say that. A couple of things. Let's just jump over to the chat real quick. 3 hours ago said, "Hey, I just joined the show. Have they talked about how well the tracking works yet?" We haven't talked about that. Is that something you want to cover in this one?
So I can show tracking on this P100. Just, we can see what it looks like on the P240, but
it's not really facing you as a subject.
Facing me. So let me just try this P100 really quick.
Yeah.
So let's see, right? So I believe we just changed it used to be a red square around the subject, but now it's blue. So right now it's on fallback, which means if it loses my face, it's going to go to my body. But so far, this is pretty good. I haven't even dialed in any settings.
You haven't changed anything. You're sitting on fallback. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So this does what it's supposed to do, main single subject right in front of a camera, keeping me in frame. So if I wanted to adjust my where I want to place the subject, let's say we want to still keep it at that horizontal value, that vertical value, but we just need to change the horizontal. So if I go over here and press update, now it's going to want to keep me, that's a little bit too far. It wants to keep me in that section, right? So it's always keeping me on the left, right? Because maybe I have a presentation over on, this side, right?
Yeah.
Or like we have like an overlaid PowerPoint or things like that in the vMix production or things like that. So I want to put that over back to the center. So now I'm centered.
One of the pieces to review there is the error correction, the vertical and horizontal error correction. So this is one that I find in a live scenario you have to finesse a little bit, because essentially if you have a presenter and he's walking around on stage, you don't want the camera to move like right away. It's too jerky. It feels like it's like it feels mechanical is what it feels like. And so the error correction will allow the presenter or your subject to get to a certain portion of the frame and then start moving. So if you have a guy that shifts his weight, or if you have a guy that fakes you out and like tries to, like, he's going to take a step but then he doesn't, you don't want your camera correcting for every single one of those.
Right.
And so you can change the error correction value. And I find for live on stage at like 50 to 70 feet, somewhere in the 0.2, 0.3 range seems to be acceptable, because it gives the guy enough room to move and to shift his weight and to pace a little bit.
Yep.
But then when he gets to the actual basically 1/3 of the frame, then the camera starts to move and track. And so it's super helpful, because then it doesn't feel as mechanical, especially if you're doing a live production. But I have found that the tendency for the camera to wander seems to be a little higher as you increase that error rate, like ratio. So I don't know if that's your experience, Jake, but from using it in a live situation, that's how
absolutely. I mean, when you we were just testing that as you were going through it, that if you increase that horizontal value, right, when we keep it at 1, it's constantly moving, right?
Yep.
But then as soon as I get that up to 4 or at least 3, I have a little bit of a range before that starts to take on. If we put it all the way to 6, I would even check that before. It's not even moving until I'm practically off the frame.
Yeah, right? And the thing that then you have to play the dance with, I find, again, just from a practical use case, is that now you have to change. I don't know why they called it gamma, but it's basically the speed of the camera.
Yep.
So you can dial that down. So I go to like 2 or 3, and then I change the gamma to like 4 or 3 or somewhere in there. And then as the guy's walking across the stage, it starts to smooth. Yeah, it smoothly kind of paces over. Now, if he's presenting in a high energy situation, then you may want to keep it at 5 or 6 because you want it to go and you want to follow him quickly, because if he's going to race over to the other side of the stage or walk purposefully and quickly, a slow pan is you're probably going to lose him off the frame by the time the camera starts to move, because you have the error correction, and then the speed is set to slower, so you're probably going to lose him off the frame.
Right.
So it takes a little bit of, again, kind of subjective as to how you have it deployed in your scenario, because my scenario is going to be different than yours, and different venues, different lighting, different everything. So you kind of have to play with it a little bit. It's not just like what buttons do I click? It's how do I get this to function correctly and as expected in my scenario? And so we don't have a whole lot of high energy presenting where in the place that I've used it. Mm-hmm. And so I can keep the values a little bit lower and actually the error correction a little bit higher, because I want the subject to move to the edge of the frame before I start following him, as you would do with a live manned follow cam. So you have like a bust shot, you've got your cameraman, he's operating his camera. Well, they don't move right away every tiny movement that the guy moves, or it would be jarring to watch. Like it would be very difficult to watch that, and you would end up listening to it more than you'd actually engage with it visually. So again, it goes into a lot of the what are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? And so when it's like, well, what do I set it at? It's like that's not the right question. The right question is, what is the end result? What are you going for? And we give you all the options, and actually we give you more options than we probably should in Cam Control, but we give you a ton of customized options, and you get to pick and choose what you use,
Exactly.
Andrew says, I appreciate all the training opportunities. I am primarily an audio guy, but I've had to learn a lot of the camera stuff since lockdown. Yeah, you and a lot of the world, which is why we do stuff like this, because there's a big need for it, for sure.
Listen, I started just as an audio guy, don't knock it. It's incredibly important in the whole streaming workflows and the way the broadcast industry is. Signal flow is so important, and it travels beyond audio into video signal flow, audio signal flow, some of these virtual VR signal flows now, and then vMix signal flows. And it's just, as long as you can get your source from A to Z, which is your, source to end of production, you're in the clear. So, and that's why we're all here, right? To assist you guys in making those productions happen.
And to figure out how to do it, like, again, I always go back to this. It's like there's not like a magic bullet. It's not like we're sending you like a package of stuff and it's like, if you buy this, you will have this outcome. These are cameras. These are things that have like adjustable sensors, and these are things that can adapt. But if you're getting into the game and you're buying a complex product like this, it's helpful to have some resources to actually figure out how to set them up, and that's, Jake jumps on a call, or my agents, they're answering tickets all the time, and we can tell you what the buttons do, but we will also encourage you to like think about what it is that you really want the end design to be, and we can help you get to that goal. That's the point, right?
Exactly.
So, 3 hours ago, hey, thanks. Does auto tracking get confused by a stage with lights and things in the background, or does it work just fine at larger zoom ranges?
It really depends. You really want your main subject to be, properly exposed and in focus. If
Yep.
there are, big lights in the shot, I wouldn't think that like practicals would, get in the way of it, but just it is looking for the properly exposed image. So,
And there are a few ways that you do that from an engineering standpoint. There are a couple of like commonly used equations for auto tracking, and so we've integrated it into camera control as like a centralized location. You can pull up the cameras that you want to do that with. But there are a couple of ways. They each have their pros and cons. Okay, so you have to kind of pick your poison and go with it. But they do have their pros and cons. I find this extremely reliable, especially for long multi-camera shoots with a single subject on stage. I find that to be really consistent. You do need to be, it's a different type of production environment when you switch to a cam control setup, because if you're used to steering the ship with a joystick or like maybe a stream deck or something like that, and then you switch to an automated situation like this, you're managing settings in this instance instead of managing like tactile controls. So it's a little bit strange that way, where you're doing everything through cam control. You can adjust the colors and everything too through there, but essentially when it comes to tracking, you're monitoring the tracking and making sure, that it's operating as you need it to, and then you're adjusting it if it's not. And so there's I find that it's a totally different production environment experience when you're managing an like 3 cameras auto tracking. That's different than setting up the shot. Like, okay, so the way that I would work my workflow on a one-man band is I'd have my primary output. So let's say this P200, and then I've got this 240. Well, while I'm on the 200, I'm adjusting the 240 for the next shot, and then I'm ready and I'm going to cut to it. I'm either going to use the cadence of the song, or I'm going to use the flow of the presenter or whatever. I'm going to pick my choice of how I'm going to produce this show. And I'm going to set up my shot and go to that shot. Yep. Maybe I'll use the joystick to follow a camera or whatever. When you run in cam control, it's like having 3-man cameras.
Yeah.
And you set up the focal length and you set up the settings and you get the picture looking correctly for that camera, for that focal length. And then you turn that thing on and it drives itself.
It's great. It's so
fun. It is really cool.
It really adds, it lets you think about other things, right? It lets you think about the production, lets you figure out, hey, what cameras can I cut to,
But I also find though that you're not thinking the way that you did in the first scenario, right? Where we're setting up a shot and we're going to that. Now we're kind of freed up. Our 3 shots are set, or however many cameras you're running. 3 shots are set, and we're deciding when to cut to each of them. And I'm monitoring the settings that are going on in cam control. And so there's one less thing to do and one more thing to do. Mm-hmm. And they're totally different things, which makes it kind of a different production environment experience. So it's interesting. If you're a high stress type of person and you like to have the tactile control, it's really hard to go over to an automated thing where the cameras are being told where to go and what to do by a computer. But it seriously changes the way that your production looks, because it looks like you got 3-man cameras.
Yeah.
And if you're a one-man band, that is an expensive production to produce, and you don't have to have 4 other people running the show. It can just be you. So
yep,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really exciting stuff.
If we set auto tracking and then zoom in or out a lot, how will the tracking behave? Well, that's a workflow question. You wanna take a stab at that?
Yeah, let's try it out. So let's keep this at these settings as we had before, because that was pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And then let's jump back over to this camera, my P100. I have a keyboard onto the side. So it's still keeping me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It still wants to put me center frame, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to adjust until it does. And then if I go back and zoom out, still keeps me, right? So you can be able to still have, rock on that zoom rocker. So see, it lost my face there. So it tried to find my body, right?
Yeah. And with a black background and a black shirt, that would be a challenge.
That would be. So Right. So you can have your PTZ controller or your Stream Deck zooming in and out, right?
Right.
And still having auto tracking, keeping your pan and tilt where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Right.
The only thing that I would mention there is the gamma or the speed doesn't adapt, and so
yes,
when you get into a tighter shot, it will still be a slow pan. So you may need to bump that up a little bit. So if you zoom in, you bump up your gamma a little bit and then speed up the camera so it tracks a little quicker. But from what Jake is showing us here, that doesn't seem to be a big issue. And again, it's just a workflow question. It's like if I zoom way in, I'm going to have to speed up the camera's movement a bit just to keep up with the fact that the frame is now filled with more with the subject. Yeah.
That was a good question. That was really cool.
Yeah, that is a good question. Well done.
And it worked out really well.
Yeah, I honestly, I think once you understand the program and like what does what, then you can make those quick adjustments and not have to worry too much. So, do you need to make your color, gamma, and contrast settings every time that you boot a camera?
No, they should stay on the last. They load preset 1, right? If I recall correctly, John. So whatever you save as your preset 1 and you power down the camera and boot it back up, that is the default procedure.
Correct.
So I personally like saving my preset 1 for my default camera shot every time for production, if I am bringing those around. And even if it's a permanent install, I always like to resave preset 1 with my default settings, so that way if there is a power loss or there is a power cycle for firmware updates or whatever it is, that it jumps back in.
Yeah, and it depends on how you save it. So remember that you can save camera settings and you can save PTZ settings, and so the camera will recall to position 1, preset 1, regardless of how you save it. But whether you want the coloration to be saved in that preset or just the position of the camera to be saved in that preset, that's the deciding factor when you save preset 1. Now, the option to do that is on the OSD, where it says, I believe it says something like...
let's see, I believe it's...
preset 1 or something like that.
Let's check it out.
Yeah. But that's the way you do it. And ideally, like what Jake is talking about, is that you would save it. There you go. So reload preset 1 on. So that's what, when the camera reboots, do you want preset 1 to be called, or just for it to boot and go to home position and no settings saved at all? So if you do that, you enable that preset 1 on, then it will recall whatever preset information is saved on preset 1. And if you want it to be the coloration, then save it with camera settings in the web UI. You can save it with camera settings, hit save, press preset 1, and then it should reboot every time with those settings. That's it's super helpful because it always gives you a kind of a safe home position, especially if you're in the middle of something and settings get changed or messed up. You can always hit preset 1, go back to basically ground zero, and then you can start to rebuild from there. Hey, that sounds great. I'll give it a shot. Can I start and stop auto tracking with a Stream Deck yet?
Not yet.
So soon with the upcoming update for API, I assume?
We'll get into that soon.
Okay. Soon, we hope. We hope soon. Hey, that was a nice auto tracking demo. Dancing Jake. We will we'll update his name in a minute here. It'd be nice if there was a button to switch the UI to be a little more touch friendly than the larger touch targets. On the web UI or on the OSD is my question there, because I feel like the web UI is
cam control. Because if you're on the web UI, I personally jump in and here, let me pop on over to my screen again. Something that I do frequently is I'll use the zoom in and zoom out features right inside inside Chrome, right? So this is what it would look like on mobile, or if it was shrunk anyway.
Yep.
Right. So we still have all those functions, and then we get our camera control and our login buttons, right? But if it's for cam control, you might have to change your resolution settings of your computer.
Yeah.
So I would try that, because I know on some of the Windows Touch tablets, they are alternative resolutions.
Yeah.
So, or the scale is changed. So that might be something to look at.
Yeah, it's funny because when you start designing software for Windows, you have to take into effect, which is something we initially we were not paying attention to, but we do now. That Windows allows you to increase the text by like 125% or 50 or 175, and it like stretches it out so that it looks natural on a huge like 4K screen.
Mhm.
But then when you run native software that's designed for a 1080 at 100% resolution, then it's all either like super tiny or it gets like super stretched out, however you have the settings. And so yeah, it's all those like, oh yeah, we didn't test it on every single different dial that you can change it on, and lo and behold, everyone in the world is using different settings on their screens because they all have their own preferences. And so yeah, it's something that we had to address with future updates. So Lars says thanks. Olive Branch Church of Christ, what's going on? Hey, I'm hoping that Cam Control API is coming soon. Looking forward to the BirdDog PTZ module upgrade for Companion 3.0. Okay, so little unknown fact about this is that the BirdDog module with Companion was done by a third party. And that's actually the case with a couple of modules that are out there in the wild. But it was done by a third party in conjunction with our API and our engineers. But if I recall correctly, that was done by a non-BirdDog employee. They added it to the list, at least in the 2.0 one.
And recently, BirdDog Central has been added into Companion.
What?
Oh, let me show you this, John.
Oh my goodness, I'm making you full screen.
So this is really exciting. So we all know BirdDog Central, which is one of my favorite programs.
It is one of your favorites.
Because I get instant switching. Like, how incredible is this? Like, I'm just looking inside my web UI of Central, which now I can also switch over to Stream Deck.
Here's the thing about Jake is Jake gets hyped about almost anything, but I have never seen him as excited about Central about anything other than Central. He's very excited about Central, and so
it's amazing. It's
good stuff.
I mean, it's the basis of all my NDI workflows and installations now, just because of how powerful this stuff can be.
Yeah.
So this PTZ router, we don't want to do that, because so I'm using BirdDog, the NDI webcam to get my PTZ video feed into StreamYard, so that way I can chat with John, right? Yep. Soon that's going to be a BirdDog pod, but for right now I'm using NDI webcam. So webcam is looking at this PTZ router output, which lets me switch between my PTZ cameras. So when I go ahead and click this 240, we're going to cut to my 240.
Right.
If I want to cut to my P4K, instantly just clicking on the web UI to be able to switch back and forth between in Central.
Right.
However, with the API power of Central and Stream Deck, now that there's a module, I can now switch this over to any source without having to click the web UI, right? So instead of clicking over here on my Stream Deck, which I unfortunately don't have an overhead cam. So let's see if this works. Right. So here's my Stream Deck. Right. So now I could go ahead and
wait. There we go. Okay. Yeah.
There we go. Right. So now I have instant switching on my Stream Deck.
Oh, geez.
For Central.
There it is.
So let's go back over to Companion, because so before you could have just used the API commands and type in the HTTP stuff. However, one of my buddies over at Companion I sent them the API docs and I said, hey, can you please put this in? Luckily he did. So let's make a new button for P240, right?
Yep.
So regular button, we'll call this my P240, right? So on my press down action, BirdDog Central, but let's go ahead and show you all the actions we can do. We can connect a source to destination, which means we can push an NDI source to a BirdDog Play with Stream Deck. We could push a source to a destination group, which means we can push it to a bunch of plays or a bunch of flex outs or any BirdDog decoder. We could add sources to groups, which organizes your NDI sources if you need to. You can add and create routers, which is what I'm using for my PTZ video into StreamYard. What are some really good ones? Add and create generators, start and stop playlists. The list goes on. So be sure to check out Central, download that, download the BitFocus companion module for this.
Is it just in one of the latest updates, or is it a separate thing?
It was in the beta. However, I believe it's baked in now. So okay. I haven't tried the most recent one. So that would be something cool to check out. So, but what I want to do is I want to connect my source to a router, right? So a router is this PTZ router, right? Which is what I'm using. This is the only router that I have on Central right now. So that's the only one that shows up. And what's fantastic is that this already shows all of your NDI sources.
Oh, nice.
So you just have to pick and pull which one that you want to go, right? So now I want to jump to my P240. And so now if I test this button, where's my test? We cut right over to my P240. Now, if I go back to screen capture and I test press this, I'm back over here. And then with the whole BitFocus like emulator, you can realistically not even have a physical stream deck. You can use the emulator and have this on a web page on your,
have they given you the option to have a smaller emulator? I know they always give you like the 50 button one. This one.
Yeah, it's always the 50 button. Unfortunately, I
mean, it's no big. It's not the end of the world, but it's just always like if I just could have like 6 buttons on my screen, then that would be super convenient. But for $100, you could also physically have 6 buttons. So
it's great. So if you have Central already, be sure to check this out. So where is it? If we go over to BirdDog, right? Yep, BirdDog Central shows right up as the first option.
Nice.
And then all that you would need to do is input your IP address of your computer. So let me just delete this and edit this to show you that that's where my computer's at. And then I can switch back over to my P100.
Man, that's very helpful. So you know somebody over at Companion that can...
So this is actually crazy. He emailed in over in a ticket, so on the help desk. So
yeah,
and we meet a lot of fantastic and exciting people, just from the hello email and the help email and whatnot, and people that want to just chat about BirdDog and stuff. Yeah, I believe he's on the companion team, Jamie or James. It's been a little bit since we chatted.
Nice,
but yeah, really exciting that he was able to. He, super quick in adding this stuff in. So it's a really good way to test and see how your, API system would work through, again, those plays, being able to have a Stream Deck or Crestron or QSys or any third party be able to say, I need all the plays in my facility to transition over to this stream. Or I need to push, the content from this church service to 3 different overflow rooms and conference rooms or wherever it needs to go. So the power of it is incredible.
I was going to say there are like a few things in the NDI ecosystem that I always feel are like unsung heroes. Discovery Server is the one that I always say. But with the revamp of Central, I mean the potential behind it. We did a show on Central, right? A long time ago
when it came out. Yep.
Yeah, and it was just like it just seems to me that like it is one of those things that that if you integrate it correctly, then the potential for, especially like now that third party stuff is able to call commands of it and you're not actually needing to like click the website. Like that's the other thing is it makes it versatile so that you can get to it on any machine on that subnet. But if you can get it to the point where companion can control it, now we're talking about actual integration. Now we're talking about third parties. You're able to customize the buttons. You're able to, like, every church and every nonprofit school gets a copy of it if they ask for it, right? So, now we're simplifying workflows.
Like I said before, it's the basis of all my NDI workflows now. Just being able to have that virtual router, being able to switch, being able to have, if you just have MP4s and you need to just play them back as NDI just for looped video content when a service isn't going or broadcast isn't happening. That's a fantastic way to do that. And then even just being able to organize all my sources and one place to go to jump in for all my cameras. So like back over here, there is my P240 on my side. So I can just jump in and get to the web interface right from Central.
Yeah.
So just being able to have that, or organizing my cameras, or let's say these are all my cameras in one room, and then these were my cameras in a different room. My destinations, right? So these would be 2 plays inside, a space for Zoom or Teams, and being able to push that to the meeting room. Or if I have all of floor 10 needs to be changed to some digital signage content, now it's just as easy as a push of a Stream Deck or tied into the system control.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's like gives you house control now.
Yep. Or just logging into the web interface of it, which is because it's a web server now. So you can walk around with a tablet and jump into this via the web, because it's just pushing commands back and forth.
Right. It's not complicated in terms of how it's functioning, but the fact that it's so accessible. It's so good. I love it.
It's great.
Awesome. I'm going to tidy up some of the chat here. The fonts on that OSD look really classic. We don't have any control over the font on the OSD. Hey, I'm looking forward to the API for cam control tracking to use. Oh, we already read that one. Sorry. Any updates on the image stabilization? Sometimes cameras are placed at a bit of a shaky place, and with zooms, even small vibrations look like a large shake of a camera.
Yes. So a few of our cameras, let me just triple confirm. Yes, the P240 has this as well. A stabilizer. Let me just pull this down and switch over.
Yep.
So P240 has a stabilizer, and as you see, when I click that in, we get a little bit of a crop. So that's a little bit of I believe it's a digital crop on that.
Yep.
Just to do some stabilization. That's perfect for when you're using these on wall mounts that are on the same plane as the doors that are in and out of the room that you're going into. So that usually helps. I know there are a couple people that put rubber stoppers for more isolation from those walls that have constantly opening and closing stuff. But it does help.
Yeah, and those are, if you were to say, how do I do it without like having to buy an actual stabilizing rig? So it depends, right? Like, again, it's like subjective. How much shake are we talking about here? Are we talking about like metal doors clicking shut, or are we talking about doors that swing quietly closed? Are you talking about HVAC systems? Like we got to get into it a little bit.
Yep.
But that's just it. All the things that Jake just said, the rubber stoppers, we see that often, turning on the stabilizer, creating some level of floating, where the mount to the wall is mounted through the rubber, like washers and stuff, but then the camera is also mounted to the mount with rubber washers, and then the stabilizer's on. We see a fair bit of success that way. And then, of course, to the extreme is we don't have an official sanctioned stabilizing rig, but they are out there. And if you're mounting it on a surface that's literally moving, no amount of cropping the sensor is really going to help you. So you'll have to either reconsider the location of the camera, or probably buy a rig that can float the camera and stabilize it that way. And that's a whole market of products. Like that's a real thing. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at, I think, on that. The module developer said that he's awaiting info from y'all for the update. Hint, hint.
We'll make
module.
sure that we're on that.
Yeah, we'll double check on that then. I don't know of anybody that's asked us for information, but yeah, we can check that out. Heavy Bob is really excited about the Bird Dog show.
Hey, Bob.
What's going on, man? Hey, so Christian's been helping me on a strange cam control issue. On some of my computers, cam control doesn't show video, but on others, it just seems to work fine. Same settings, same network. Any idea what to check? Out of the gates with software, it's typically, especially if it's working on some of your machines and some of them not, then we know that the software package is correct because it does work. But the things to check are usually Windows Defender, Windows Firewall, any sort of like antivirus stuff or whatever, anything that could block the NDI ports from transferring the video. The curious question I would have for you in this instance is, does control work? Can you control the camera without seeing the image? Because the NDI data, the control data, left, right, up, down, zoom, is transported over the NDI protocol, but in a different channel. And so I'd be curious to know if that's working, but the video's not. That might just indicate what port is closed on the computer or whatever. That would be where I would probably start, especially because it does work on some of your installations. So, any comments on that, Jake? Any ideas?
That's kind of what I was going to say as well, is that the NDI port for control, if that image doesn't show but control does go, then it's most likely some firewall issues or things like that that's blocking that. That needs to be opened. Fresh install, I would try that as well. Potentially creating a new user and installing cam control to see if it's administrator level or user level blockage or things like that. But Andrew does say that it was working. It
was working before I did the P200 updates for NDI5 and then updated cam control. On one computer, it shows cameras as green. Showed like the image is green.
So I would say, does it happen in Studio Monitor as well? Because cam control is just pulling the proxy stream. Which, if I understand correctly, is also on a different channel. So, there's a couple of things going on. So Studio Monitor check would be the way to go to.
Yeah, that's a great call. Double check it in. Make sure your streams are clean on the machine you're trying to install cam control on. Make sure Studio Monitor sees them clean and clear. That's a good suggestion. The new web buttons page allows you to configure sizes, offset, and only display certain pages. I'll have to look into that.
I haven't tried that. The new one yet.
If you're on PTC preset 2 and recall preset 3 or any other, is there an option so that the transition is smooth, combining zoom and pan and tilt and easy in and out for on-air transitions?
So,
go ahead.
It really depends. So when we added the super fine controls, that helps a lot. But there's also in this web interface, in our preset section, preset speed. So we're able to have those presets launch slower or faster, depending on what you need. So let's check this out. So if I save this as preset 2, and then let's go down over to this little EV, right? I'll save this as 3. So let's see.
That may have resaved on top of 2 because it was still.
You're right. Let's see. So this was my 1. Oh, it did resave on top of 2. So let's go ahead and change that in the web interface, because that speed control isn't in cam control in the application yet. Let's see if we put this down to 1. Or actually, let's save this here. I just want to see if the slow goes first.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that's at the minimum value. So that's you don't want that.
That's going to take an eternity to call between the two.
There we go. There we go. So let's check this out. So if we jump over here, preset 2, fast, right? back to preset 1 fast. Then if we slow this down to, let's say, 20 or 17, still going pretty slow.
I'd be curious to know what the difference is. Like 1 through 15 is super slow, and then like 17 through 25 are,
let's see,
medium.
Okay, now this is at 9, so that's
okay.
That's a smoother pan, right?
That makes more sense, yeah.
And let's drop down to 6. And now let's drop down to 3. So you can see you can go back and forth between presets and change directions, right? So then now that's at 3, right? Let's see if we add I forget, is there a zoom move at the end of this one? No. So let's hit that as now preset 3. So I can go back in here and back up here. And let's see if this changes for zoom as well. So I don't believe zoom right now is controlled through this preset speed.
Yeah, I don't think so.
As I check between this, it's still doing the full value, even though if I want to go back to my preset 1, which is fully zoomed in and all the way back at the other location, right?
Yep.
So what I would probably do in that production is save that pan and tilt, because we have that as speed control in presets. And then have your PTZ keyboard being able to do your zoom in and outs.
Right.
So like if I wanted to go back over to preset 2 and I wanted to make that a wide at that position, or if I'm instead of having a wide over here, my zoom speed is too fast, but I think you get the idea.
Yeah. Cool stuff.
And the detail of this 240 is ridiculous. So here, let me just move this out of the way and pull up Studio Monitor for this 240 so we can check this out a little bigger.
Yeah, that sensor is pretty crazy for what it costs. You know, the value that you get out of it, or the detail on the image, is pretty crazy.
So let's just open up the exposure a little bit, because I want to see some detail over here, or apply some gain, right? And so see, that's 27 dB of gain, right? And like, that's a clean image.
Yeah, there's not much distortion there.
Here, I'll actually kick on over to the camera itself for the stream.
Nice.
Right? So on this, so now we can, let me turn on manual focus through the keyboard. Let's see. Or I'll do some 1 pushes. So you get incredible bokeh too, right? So
yeah.
So now we can see that focal range when it's wide like this.
Right.
And then let's check this out. What else can we zoom into? Oh, so I have that stabilizer on.
I was going to say, do you have the stabilizer on? Because you can definitely see it's trying to stabilize the image.
Trying to do something, right? So let's turn that off in cam control, right? Yes, stabilizer was on. So it was floating around. Oh, these guys are fun.
Oh, nice.
The NDI ducks.
CJ gave me like a blue New Tech one.
Yep.
Sweet. I was like, didn't know where it came from.
Yeah, I took that one from ISE, so I wanted to make sure you guys had one in your office.
Yep, there is one here for sure. Watching you guys talk about this demo feature is really helpful. There's only so much text on websites that I can do. I'm replacing our Sony PTZs. We'll go with BirdDog.
Awesome.
Yeah, that is
I
awesome.
think you'll like that a lot. When I did my BirdDog, PTZ, Sony, Panasonic, all the other manufacturer shootouts before I joined Team BirdDog, that's kind of where I ended up. You know, being able to have cam control and cloud and now central and everything kind of under all the same hood and one place to go to for if you want to talk about workflows and productions.
Right.
I mean, we love all of everybody in the NDI sphere or the SRT sphere because it's all interconnected, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if we have, you know, Adobe Premiere streams going over NDI into cloud or like screen capture from NewTek or whatever it is, like there's, you know, we love being able to interface with them.
Yeah, it doesn't do us any good to try and like go it alone, you know, because the whole space is integrated. And if you think like, oh no, we'll make a product for every need, you'll never make enough products. But if you think we'll make it versatile so it can be integrated with all the products out there, and that's kind of the concept of the API and you know what it is that we're trying to do there. So wiggly floors are the bane of my existence in the portable world. Some suggestions here for helping with cam control. Make sure that your computer network is set to private. NDI video won't broadcast if the network is being identified as public by Windows. He says, I can see the streams in Studio Monitor, and I've done a clean install, but I totally understand that there's something wrong with my hardware. And you said you can control it in cam control without seeing the video. So that's an indication that there's probably just one of the NDI ports are getting blocked somehow. I'll have to go and read the actual notes as to which ports you need to look at specifically, but I'll talk to Christian because he's just here in the office. We'll get you sorted. Hey guys, Central, is it switching from proxy pictures to full NDI streams like a TriCaster and all this NDI streams that go into Central full NDI all the time? I'm thinking about bandwidth requirements.
So for Central, at least for the router, I have to triple confirm this, but that shouldn't really be pulling streams into Central at all because we're just doing routing, kind of like how our PTZ keyboard router routes sources around. It creates the streams on the network, but it doesn't actually broadcast from the keyboard itself.
Yep.
I'll triple check with the developers about if that's our integration with Central, but I assume that is. I know that's the case when we're routing it to the decoders specifically because it never hits it. The only time you'll have to think about bandwidth from Central machines are when you're using the generator module, because that's actually using the MP4s that we flip into NDI on the machine itself and then push it onto the network. Mm-hmm. So actually, let me just pop on over. I can show you what that looks like. If I come over here, and I love having it on the Stream Deck. It makes it so easy to switch.
Seriously.
So let's see. I have a couple playlists that I can start and engage. So here's a few inside this converter playlist. Cloud has 2 playlists over here, and also varying formats. And so we can have a 1080 60 and a 1080 a 4K stream in there. So all of these are pre-converted H.264s that I've flipped into NDI, which is how they're listed here. And then inside Studio Monitor, I have Central here, which now will play back my playlists. Yeah. Right. So we can see there's my camera playlist. Here's my converter playlist. Here's the BirdDog Reel.
I need to get this set up in the support office just so that we have a constant NDI source, that's not a camera, you know?
Yeah.
Just a video, so
that's cool. I mean, I usually have these floating around because they're really good ways to push demos through BirdDog Cloud, right? Yep. Because I have constant looping videos that I know are good as the source. I know they're good as NDI, and then I confirm that the recipient at the other end has that stream as they should.
Right.
Right. So because Central and Generator is creating these NDI streams, that's going to create bandwidth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I don't believe retransmitter works that way because it's specifically pulling the NDI streams from each. And I know we don't remux them together. So I'll triple check on that for you guys.
Cool. Let me see here. In Central Light, how do I set a destination? Spec says that there are 2 destinations available for free, but it's just picking up a random device.
So what you would, I have Pro available right now. So I believe you just get this source view and you don't have retransmitter. However, so if I have my sources over here, so I have my P240, and then I wanted to send that to this this device over here, you would have to select the play, and then I would select the source, select the play, and press connect. And then,
so if he's got multiple decoders, how does he tell Central to pick specific ones? Is that an option, or does it just find the first 2?
You select on the left-hand side by clicking the unit.
Okay.
So I see over here how this gets selected over here, but now if I go up to my P4K, that's selected. I mean, sorry, my PTZ keyboard. So let me know if that works for you, because you should be able to select the individual ones. In Central Light, you do not have access to groups, so I can't push it to the meeting room. So if I wanted all of those to go to one place, now both of those streams are connected. Both of those decoders are connected to the B240.
Yeah.
Right. But if I just wanted to push, like, let's say the single P4K to that destination, now the P4K is going to the play and the P240 is going to the flex or whatever is plugged in.
Right. Okay, we'll keep charging through here. I'm pushing Jake well past his required time to be with us here, so we'll try and get to all your questions here. But hey, man, if you have to jet at any point, feel free.
No, I mean, I love talking about this stuff. So
awesome. Question about pod, Teams, Zoom, conference rooms. If the pod is used to capture two USB, and you of course have the 240 in the room, how do the regular Joe Schmoes control the camera? So you want the PTZ function of the camera to, well, maybe we should back up. So the function of pod is to convert an NDI signal to USB input so you can use it as your webcam. That's the point there. Typically, well, and Jake may be able to do more proof of concept stuff here, but typically those cameras are set to positions, and I've seen them where they're using like Densitron or Extron or whatever to call preset positions in the room. So they're not steering the camera around like you would a PTZ necessarily. Although, was it you? Yeah, you showed us the Densitron panel. Do they have a touch, like,
they did have
steer
a touch
the camera
screen
option?
for steering the screen.
Ridiculous.
Steering the camera on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like that unit. I want to get one just to have it over here on my desk, because it's really easy just to be able to have a touch screen to go up and down.
Yeah.
I mean, that can be programmed to any buttons, like on QSys, I believe, has that as well. Stream Deck, I mean, putting the up-down function buttons on that is really simple to do. But to pod,
right? I was going to just say, take a step back. The Joe Schmo is really, the function of pod is to bring in the NDI stream as your webcam. That's the point. How you control it and what have you is more of an integration question, I think.
It is. And the way to do that would be through the API section. So just like in the keyboard, which I can pull up, give me 1 second, log into this unit, just because I don't have that pod plugged in. But anyway, inside the API engine of the pod has the ability to push out commands to any third-party device, including our cameras. So if you want to have a pod on the table and you only have a single camera and you want to have the pod launch presets, you just have to issue the preset command API to the camera in the room, right? So you can have a single unit just launch presets. You can have it since it can hit our API and our cameras, it can have it do any API command that we have access to. So if you wanted to, flip the camera, if you wanted to change the exposures based on the time of day and the rooms, right, you can have that be able to push that there. It gets very customizable. So it really depends on the room. It depends on the project. It depends on if there are multiple cameras in the room, right? Because theoretically, I believe you can have it set. I haven't tested this yet because I have to get some updated firmware and some things like that. But to be able to switch between cameras, right? So have 2 cameras in the room and maybe 2 presets per camera, right? So, or 1 preset per camera. It really depends, right? But we'll see more once that unit's actually out on the streets. And from what I've seen is the NDI community and the BirdDog community takes this stuff to the next level, pushes boundaries, and who knows, you might find a really other sweet use for pod, because it can hit third-party devices. So you can have pod hit vMix if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, it's not restricted just to BirdDog cameras or NDI streams particularly. So
so
interesting.
It's going to be a really exciting unit.
Yeah, that's. Well, anyways, okay, I won't go down that road right now. I really appreciate your customer service. I know that you guys get hit up on Facebook sometimes, but I have never seen another company that does such a great support for free. Boom. Shout out to the support team and to the pre-sales guys.
Love
those sales engineers working hard. Appreciate that, Andrew. Thank you. Can we see a human subject 40 to 60 feet away? I'm pretty sure this is the distance most ranges of us are using with PTZ cameras. Thank you. I'll try and find one for sure. I don't have one directly on hand, but
so John actually sent you a website recently, some CCTV cam, which you can plug in. If we can check that out sometime, or we can send that in the chat. But what it lets you do, it doesn't have our cameras listed just yet. We're working on getting those listed. But if you input the tech specs from like a P240 or a P4K, it essentially shows you the distance of a subject. It's for it's like for like license plate readings for CCTV cams, but it ends up being a perfect representation of the a distance for doing subjects. So I believe at max zoom length on a P240 at 100 feet away, when you don't have the teleconvert on, so it's only doing that 20x, so it's not field of view crop. It was I think a body to headshot. Yeah. So 100 feet away is pretty far, right?
For 20 times, yeah.
For 20 times anyways. I believe it ends up being like an 88 millimeter lens at maximum distance. So that's something that we can definitely check out sometime.
Yeah, we should check that out. That'd be cool. Hey, thanks for the explanation. Follow up: if you access Central via IP in the browser, where is Central installed?
Central is installed on the Windows location, or a Windows computer that you choose for Central. It ends up being at the bottom of the taskbar on the right-hand side. Let me see if I can pop on over and show you guys.
Yeah, it's a service instead of an executable. It ends up being a Windows service, and it's a systray function.
So down over here, right? So I have my little CE for Central, and then I can jump up and hit home, and then that pulls up a web browser, which goes right to the IP address of my computer. So this is the same IP that I hit inside Companion. Except that I push ports 8080 on Companion, but that does it in the back end manually, so don't have to worry about that. But if you wanted to push your own commands through Central, I could share the API list with you guys because it's not public on our website yet, but it should be soon.
Okay, back to the Central light. Hey, it only shows one destination in the list. Every time I open Central, it's a different destination showing. So yeah, that's what I suspect. He's using Central Light, and so I'll have to double check this for you, Sean, because I think
that's an interesting one.
Yeah, you should be able to select the decoder that you want. But do me a favor. Shoot me an email and say over at help@birddog.tv. Say, hey, John was working with me on a Central Light question. Can you send this to him? And they'll put that in my inbox.
Right.
Yeah, we'll sort it out. I'll take a look at it and at least get you some sort of answers. But for sure. Hey, I'm subscribed, but I didn't get a notification. I don't want to miss out. So the show started late today, and that was because I was in meetings prior, and then I ran a 3-minute video, and so that pushed us 6 minutes in. So I'm not sure why you didn't get notified. Because you have to click that subscribe and bell button to get notified, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, that's the deal is at least over on YouTube. So be sure that hey, also quick little shout out that the BirdDogJon YouTube page, there's like 177 subscribers or something like that. Nice. So hey, whoever's doing that, that we're slowly inching up. Let's see here. I'm looking at this. Ooh, 183. So nice. 183. Yeah, it's slowly crawling forward. So good times. Lars is happy about something. Hey, I got the notification. There you go, Angus. That's because we give you special treatment around here. Hey, that's the actual bottom of the chat. Somehow we actually caught up, which was unbelievable.
You made it. That's awesome.
Well, as always, it's a pleasure, Jake. Man, thanks for hanging out with me for a couple hours and
it's been
walking
fun.
through. You're pretty popular on this channel, so anytime you want to come back, by all means.
Thanks, man.
And we do need to do the show. We had just talked about. We need to set up another one to talk about Pod whenever that officially kicks off.
We have to talk about Cloud again because there's a lot of stuff to chat about over there that I have to show you guys.
So much.
I have a fantastic demo of this amazing Adobe Premiere Panel extension that we've added in, so that way we can stream our edit sessions and Avid and everything around the world. And
I just want to do like a here are 6 workflow options and here's how it works. Like that's just to like wrap people's brains around why cloud is such a big deal.
Yep.
So we should start there and probably like revisit it once a month and talk about, all right, here are 6 like workflow ideas and how it gets integrated and why someone would want to do this. And like, just to give people an idea as to here are the options out in the world. And there's so many, there's so many stinking options, and people are using cloud for, a multitude of reasons. So I think you'd be a perfect guy to walk us through that conversation.
Happy to. That'll be an exciting one.
Cool. All right, folks. Well, I've got to get to work because it's almost 1 p.m. And where are you these days, Jake? Because you kind of bounce around. So you're in California. Okay.
Yeah, PST.
How long? Is this the longest stint at home that you've had since Christmas time?
Yes, it's been great. It's been good being home in my studio because I get to actually use my NDI stuff, all my BirdDog equipment. I have the whole Dante studio, so obviously I have guitar pedals and stuff. So having all this things to stream on my network into vMix and confirming how all of these workflows are, I like being in the office. It's good. Yeah,
it's good stuff to finally be home for a little bit. But you were traveling a ton, which is really why it was so difficult to get you integrated.
And that's why I had to do that, live from ISE because I haven't been on the show for a little bit, and I wanted
that was one of the major things.
All this stuff, and then that's also something that we should talk about on another show about video wall and jumping into how central and stuff. Because just on the floor, I was able to. What would we do? We put central routers into multi-view and then sent multi-view into video wall. So that way we had individual quadrant control of our 2x2. Yeah. So we were able to place native 1080p feeds from a 4K multi-view stream and have individual cameras and quadrants for Zoom and Teams rooms, or if you're doing I could even see this in broadcast spaces where you need to have your NDI streams, for a big multi-view for your PTZ operators or whatever. It's really exciting.
Cool.
And it's all powered just on place, right? So
that's the crazy piece is that it's like these in the NDI world, these really inexpensive decoders just running the whole show.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a pod light. No need for switching. I just need one NDI source. vMix handles all my switching. vMix is handling my switching too, by the way.
Yep.
We'll send that up to the product developer guys. It's nearly 4 a.m. here in Brisbane. I wish you guys were in the same time zone as the vMix guys, who are also here in Queensland, so I can watch this all at a normal time. Jake's live streaming channel. I got to subscribe to Jake. Yeah, that's next. We'll convince him to have a twice a week show.
Yeah, we'll do
Although that. when you're not on camera and demoing something, which is all the time. So
all the time. Yep.
All the time. Well, look, I want to have you back always, but have you back to show us some more stuff. I really appreciate you taking time out for today. And folks, also thanks for keeping the chat alive and walking us through questions that you had, whatever. Hopefully you gained something from it. It's always a pleasure to hang out and just get to finally talk to each other and get to see other BirdDog employees. So that's always nice.
Thanks, John. That was great being here.
Absolutely, man. We'll definitely chat with you soon and plan to go with that there. And I'll close this out. We'll finish up the show. Take it easy, Jake. All right, folks, we're wrapping it up because I actually do need to probably go and do some work. So I am going to do some other work. This is technically work, but hopefully like I said, hopefully you've gained something of value out of this. And it's always great to have Jake on the show. So hang in there. It's the end of the week, getting really close to it. Hopefully that is exciting stuff for you. I'm looking forward to it as well. We're iced over here in Michigan. We're slowly thawing out. It's going to go up to it's going to go up to 43 degrees. So it's all going to melt, but it's a slow thaw. So hopefully you're doing well and you're looking forward to the weekend. Be sure that you take care of yourselves, though, out there. It's a busy, busy world. And, of course, take care of each other because you never know what people are dealing with. So hang in there. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Come back next Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. That's the plan. We're going to hang out again at that point. And until then, hit us up at help@birddog.tv if you've got a question or you got an issue with the BirdDog product that you need a little help with support. I got a team of people that handle that, and they'll be sure to get in touch with you. Otherwise, we'll see you on Tuesday. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
That's a problem for future Homer. Man, I don't envy that guy.